Hello everyone, welcome back to the video again. Without further ado, let's start off with the market analysis. So we're going to look at the index, and then we are going to look at what are the possible movement next week, followed by individual stocks. Let's start off with the US market first. Let's recap what happened last week. So last week we had a good Thursday and Friday. As we can see, the Dow rebounded strongly to break past its resistance at 35066. Of course, we also have to give credit to this major support level, which this Dow has managed to hold firmly. And when it pulled back last week, it did not retest this major support level, which is a good sign. So this is a higher low, and then now we are on set to look at a potential higher high, which will be looking at the next resistance at 35513. So the best scenario is that the Dow continue to move higher to retest this resistance to form the next higher high there. Now of course, if it doesn't have the strength to continue higher, the pullback from this high to retest support at 35066, and if we hold at this level, we bound to form a higher low. Then next higher high at 35513 is still possible. But what are we looking at next week? So first, we recap what happened last 2 days of trading on last week. Then we look at next week, what are the possibility. So what we see is that the US market has a very strong economic data. Okay, so the retails numbers are good, and then of course on top of that, the banks have given strong sets of results. So as I mentioned last week, the bank's result is in focus, and then we are looking at the market reacting strongly to strong result from the banks. So if the bullishness continue, like I mentioned earlier, we really want to see 35513 get tested again. Let's look at S&P 500. S&P 500 has just broken slightly above its resistance at 4464, and the next target will be breaking this minor resistance at 4486 and eventually hit to this high at 4546, and this will be a level that the market may be really targeting, because if you were to take note of every corrections, after every adjustment or corrections, the index tend to make all-time high. And for example, here on this particular high, we see that the Dow actually had the the S&P 500 actually had this high, and it got a corrections. So then it actually breaks past it and then went to the next high. So if the history repeat itself again, then we are looking at. So another thing to note is that, do you realize that the pattern seems to be almost similar, where if you were to focus on this part of the chart, which is highlighted over here, and then this part of the chart, now you can see that it seems like there's some bottom action forms here before it start to rally higher. So we can see that S&P 500 form some bottoming action over here before it breaks out. Now of course, the upward movement initially is shaky, and then there might be some pullback before the real movement comes in. So I do suspect that this will repeat again, but nevertheless, we still see S&P 500 ended higher. So 4546 may be compromised, and if we were to do a projection again, if you remember last time when we follow through S&P religiously, we did projection and S&P 500 never failed us, and then keep hitting our projected level. Hopefully this time round it will be the same. So if you don't recall what I say, probably you can go back and revisit all the previous video that I've recorded, and then you can look at how we traced S&P 500 step by step to hit targets. So we are looking at 4813 over here as the projected target. Can this be done? Well, I'm not framing it now. I'm just projecting it. So even if it doesn't hit there, it's fine. But at least if the market is bullish, we shall see some all-time high above 4546. Nasdaq 100, we are seeing a healthy upward movement towards its resistance at 15354. So we have to see resistance like this get tested, broken, then moving back to this major or this resistance which was tested a couple of times. So we have 15695 as a challenge for Nasdaq. So once Nasdaq cross above this level, then of course we can do our projections again. Looking at STI, so we are looking at next week a potentially challenging opening on Monday. Why? Because we have a poor day, so-called poor day on the last Friday. So first, before we go into the analysis, just recap what happened to STI. STI has managed to break out from this zonal resistance strongly, and this actually tells us that STI has a good chance to break into an uptrend. So with that kind of movement, we are looking at 3209 as the next target and resistance to watch. So STI on Friday opened higher and closed lower. So always remember that this kind of candles is not really that kind of bullish, especially if you look at here, you see open higher, close lower. Although the day itself is still positive, but it shows us some weakness, like this kind of candles, open higher, close lower, open higher, close lower. So all these kind of candles are not really that promising and that bullish. So if STI opens lower, that is not a surprise, and if STI were to close lower, that isn't a surprise either. So let's see. We are at the cross junction here, because we are right at the middle of the, not really at the high and not really at the low. So let's see how STI will react next week. Now let's go to individual stocks here. Well, last week we talked about the transport sectors, where we mentioned that we see potential upside on SIA, SATS, SIA Engineering, and yes, we have SIA Engineering, right? Just a recap, you remember this, we have drawn this, and then we have set some targets at 215, 218, and 223, and SIA Engineering actually hit the upper range of the target level at 223. So we can see strong upward movement for SIA Engineering. Can it continue? Well, there is a good chance, and hopefully it can break 223 to hit its next resistance, its next crucial resistance at 2.3. So hitting that resistance is good, and then after that we do expect some pullback, form a higher low, and then continue higher, and the next resistance will be 239, etc., and then followed by 255. So hopefully that good movement will continue. Now sets, after the gap up, rally higher to its target. Remember last week actually I set a projected target around 442, and then it hit that level and start to close lower. So what we are looking at is that it is consolidating with declining volume, and of course followed by a breakout next week above 442 will continue its bullish movement. If not, of course the best scenario is to fill up partially this gap partially from 422 to 429, then form a higher low here. That will give us a second chance for re-entry. So let's see whether sets will give us this chance or immediately break out higher. Then SIA, what we are looking at is also at the high. The next resistance for it to go to is 578, and it is moving subtly after a strong upward movement over here on this white candle. So we are looking at the 578 next target if it can continue higher from here. So next week we are looking at all these counters, seeing whether it can continue higher or there might be some slight pullback before it really move up. Next, we are looking at the banks. Let's start the banks. The banks had a poor ending to the week where we see DBS open higher and then close lower over here. Seems like this major resistance at around 35.5 is a tough nut to crack, as it keep going lower and close lower below this 35.5 resistance. So next week we'll be focusing on this resistance again. So if we can break out, then the next resistance will be 31.41. Now, of course, we are trading closer to our local bank's announcement. I believe the announcement of results or updates is going to come in somewhere in November, second week of November, and with the U.S. bank showing strong sets of results, we may see the our local bank perform better as well. OCBC also had a very poor end to the week. No doubt the whole week was good, as it rallied strongly to break past this resistance at 1179, and it managed to hit 1196 before it closed lower. So what we see here is that we see that if 1179 can get tested again, if the market see this as a weakness and start to pull back, 1179 can give a second entry. So UOB is the best performing bank thus far because it has broken out from its all-time high level at 26.41 to hit as high as 26.94 before it ends lower at 26.70. So nevertheless, the strong bullish momentum is still intact, and then we are looking at this 26.41 to be tested as support if the upward strength were to looking at a break. So let's see next week whether it's a pullback week for the banks, or there are some miracles where we see that it ignores the selling candles and then continue higher. So far, my observation is that higher opening and lower closing is, especially at the top, is not really a good sign, and it tends to lead the stocks to go down lower. So some example like this: higher opening, lower closing, so we're going to see what happens next week. Let's go to the tech sector. We are looking at AEM. The rebound is strong, which is good, pushing the counter back to above $4 range, and it went as high as 413 before it closed and settled lower at 409. So the candle itself is not a very strong candle. This is called a doji, and this doji at the top is really a weakening sign, and the market seems like suggesting that the rebound is starting to get shaky. So we have to see what is the next candle. So if it's a pullback candle, a long black, then of course we are looking at the counter to form a new support, hopefully, so that it can move into an uptrend. Then UMS recovered towards its resistance, and not to forget, the bonus issue is going to come next week, so do take note as well. The resistance to look out for so far is 165, but after the bonus it will change because the price will be adjusted accordingly. So let's see how the counter would trade to before it give up its bonus. Then we have Franken rebounded to fill up the gap, which is a good sign, but the candle isn't that strong. but it's not really a death penalty, so to speak. What we are looking at is going to be the next candle. So the next candle, if it's something like this candle here, this white candle over here, let's be more specific. Then if it's over here, of course the upward movement would probably continue. Then let's look at where it's going to head to if it continues upward movement. 252 is its resistance over there. Then the things that I want to share with you is that there is next week there is a major update or movement in the US market. So this is the news of the week. So we are looking at ProShares to launch its Bitcoin futures contracts under BITO. So for those who wanted to get into Bitcoins but fear of the management of Bitcoins, where you may lose your coin because your thumb drive get lost, or you don't dare to park inside the exchange, fearing that people will hack your account and then your Bitcoin get lost again, and then you lost an entire fortune. But actually, there are people who are making good money from Bitcoins with this exchange. But of course, if you really worry about that because you're more of the cautious type, then let the dealing with Bitcoins to the professionals, but then you just buy the ETF behind it so that you can also benefit from the Bitcoins upward movement. So because of this anticipations of this ETF listing, it helps Bitcoins to jump the more than 10% over past week, and now Bitcoin is trading over 61,000 right now. So several companies are also coming out. So Invesco and Valkyrie have applied to launch similar ETFs as well. And of course, having said that, some of these company that is listed in Singapore is also dealing with Bitcoins. Like for example, Heartland is dealing with Bitcoin. So they announced they bought a piece of land to do Bitcoin mining. And then we are looking at Heartland breaking out from its symmetrical triangle last Friday strongly. Look at the volume, very strong, extremely strong. And once it crossed this resistance at 82, the projected target is 103 from this symmetrical triangle. So let's see whether this counter can continue to move higher and hit its projected target at 103. Then the next counter in Singapore that I want to talk about is iFast. Now I just want you to focus on this pattern over here where I've highlighted, and then let's take a look at the candle that I'm pointing to right now. So you can see this candle that the arrow is pointing to, okay, and now we are looking at the current situation where we have a similar type of setup, and if the next candle were to follow through similarly, then we may anticipate a upward movement going forward with the resistance at 985 to be broken, and then the next resistance will be around $10.10. Okay, now back to the subject of Bitcoins. We can look at some of the counters that are dealing with Bitcoins in the US market, like for example Square recently announced that they are going to formulate a method to mine for Bitcoin more efficiently. So we can see a double bottom formation over here. So we can see one bottom and two bottom over here, and the resistance right now is looking at 251.88. so if Square can break out from 251.88, the projected target will be somewhere here after it breaks out from this particular resistance. So if it breaks out from this resistance at 268, then followed by this resistance at 276, then it may move into its projected target at 280. Then the other counters that are dealing with Bitcoins, like for example Coinbase, which I have been posting it inside my Telegram group. So if for those who wish to join the Telegram group, right, please sign on with Telegram, and then if you have difficulty joining the group, right, please text me through the group, and then I'll add you in manually. So Coinbase is actually very bullish. It closed strongly at 280, which was a resistance that I was watching previous week, and then the next resistance will be 293. Okay, so if Coinbase continue to rally higher. All right, next let's take a look at the banks in the US market. So we have Citigroup over here, moving towards its resistance after the good sets of results. 73 is the resistance to break. In fact, very closely followed by a 74.64. So if Citigroup were to go into this range and break up from it, then we can see upward movement, uptrend continuing towards 79.69. JP Morgan Chase, actually after announcing result, it moved down. So last week I mentioned that if the result is good, there might be a chance for it to break out 171 resistance, and then the next target will be 181. But unfortunately, on Monday there was a strong surprising sell off, and then Tuesday it continued to go down lower, and then the result, because it was the first counter to announce result, and then the analysts all came out to give a bad review of the result, saying that the banks relied on some cash that they released from the deposit to boost up their EPS, and then there are signs of slowing down in the loan sector. But actually, when more and more banks announced results, they saw the norms, and then actually they realized that the US loan sectors are actually improving. It's not going down. So therefore, all the other banks are going up. Like for example, Goldman Sachs, you can see that it actually break out from its downtrend line to move up to its resistance, which I plotted last week at 404. Then we are looking at Bank of America hitting at the high. This was a target level that I plotted, 46.84. Then it's moving towards that target already. So sometimes these analysts are really ridiculous. And then of course you are looking at the JP Morgan recovering, and when it recovers strongly like this, hopefully it can move back to its resistance at 171 and break out from there. And we are looking at Morgan Stanley also moving towards its resistance at 105. There was a strong fight back on Friday to close higher, and we are looking at a stronger movement perhaps. Okay. Next we are looking at Tesla. Very strong upward movement after it broke out from its resistance at 806. The next resistance to look out for is 877, then followed by 901. So if Tesla really pull back this time, this may be a chance for you to add position into this counter, especially if we were to retest this 806 previous resistance, which would turn support. And we are looking at Apple, forming a daily double bottom over here. And the market seems to be confident that the shortage of chips will not derail their Christmas sales. And then we are looking at the upper resistance at 157 to be retested again if the counter were to move back into uptrend. Next counter, Nvidia is moving towards its next resistance at this 225. Okay, so if it do so, then we are looking at this major resistance may be retested again at 230. Then AMD is another strong counters, because the Nvidia and AMD, they are the same sectors. They actually do a lot of this what we call gaming, and then also the processor. So we are looking at this gaming processor from both of them, and they are in strong demand. Especially AMD, they are collaborating with Tesla to provide the interior, of these what we call infotainment in the Tesla cars Model 3. So this can help AMD to go to 114 resistance, especially when Tesla is also bullish and the deliveries are strong. So means that AMD is providing more chips as well. Alright, so with this I'd like to end this week video. I hope that you enjoy this video, and then I will see you next week. You can pass around and then help to promote this video as well. So with this, I'll see you next week again. Have a good week ahead. Take care, and then see you again.